we'll have to add the. Thank you so much for that. So now this is opened my VS Code, and I want to how best to work. I'm going to import the folder, my work folder, into this page. Copy this. I have my file, my folder here. So I'm importing the folder into the workspace. So now I have the folder here, and here I have my folder on the right side. Let's see. Okay, so is not much, very much visible. So this is arrangement. I promised yesterday we are going to look at pathways of trying to add your CSS. So I'm going to do this. I'll create a folder here called styles.css, styles. Now inside this folder called styles, I'm going inside this folder. I'll create a file called style.css. So now I've created this, and I'm going to add this is for CSS. So for inline, we talked about different methods of adding CSS to file. So I'm going to do this for this running sake so that we know that what we are doing. So let's add style attributes. Okay, I think this. I'll make it this way. I'll ask you to tell me what to do. Let's know whether we're able to understand what we learned yesterday before we proceed to what we have for today. So I'm going to add this method. I'm using the inline method. So what am I supposed to do next? Am I going to add? Am I supposed to add a selector or property and value?
Property and value.
Okay, so why shouldn't I add a selector?
I think this is because it's inline.
You think that means you are not sure?
This is inline. Okay, this is inline. If we're looking at internal or external, we could use selectors.
You could.
And it could be. Oh, okay, we'll use selector and it work.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So because this is an inline method, we don't need a selector because we are writing it, we are implementing it on that element. So we don't need to add selector because we're already targeting it where we want it to be. So now I'm going to add background color and use brown. So when I save, I'm going to launch my server. So that's that, and it works very perfectly, very good. So back to what we have. So this is, I'm going to pick this out from here. Picking this out of here. So let's go to the head section and add head section. Head section. So to add internal CSS, how should I go about it?
I think you introduce style.
Internal CSS. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to use the style tab. Then nice. So now to target, I want to implement the same styling that I did for the last time in the body session. What should I do? I'm going to use, what should I do?
Oh, okay. You use the body, you write body with um parentheses, and then you write the property and the value inside.
Okay. Is this going to work?
Yes.
You use curly brackets.
Works. So now it works. So now, thank you so much. Now it takes us to what we have for today. Today we look at selectors. Now, looking at what we just did, we did something. We added a selector. Let's say ignorantly, we don't actually know what we just added something, body, background color, and this thing. Knowing from what we learned yesterday, we said the selector, the background color, and that's the property and the value. So now, how? So looking at this thing, we just did something. We just like us doing and everything worked out, and we are not even sure. Okay, if someone just comes to us now, asks us which selector is this, what did you use? We might not be like comfortably answer because we only know it's a selector. Which type of selector? We can't just say because we are not sure, or we don't. We just know that body. We just used it. It's a selector. Now that being said, taking us to today's class. But before then, let's use our external method so that we know that we have practiced the three methods and start off using the most efficient, which is the. So I have my code here. I'm going to send something like this. Then,
So stop sharing your screen.
wow, I'm going to check this one. Oh, I see. I see. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Just a minute. I think. Okay, let's see. Oh, I left the meeting. So.
Please, is everybody still on the call or is my network?
We
Yes,
are.
I'm still here.
Sir, we cannot hear
We are still
you.
on the call.
All right, I'm sorry for the disruption. Okay, so let's get this one. Okay. So I did something. Like that. So back to what we're doing, we have our CSS file here, and that being said, we want to link our external CSS to our internal CSS so that we can comment for the class. So we launched yesterday. We used link. We used the link. We use a link with the attributes of rel, then href. Now, looking at this from what we learned yesterday about source, looking at my file structure, and what I did, will this CSS work? Will this CSS affect this? The answer is no, because the where I have this CSS file is not exactly where it is. So if I want to target this very much well, I will have to do something like this. I have to say, I could either do something like put a slash, then put and target my CSS. Will it work? Let's check out. It works. Now, with VS Code, you could easily target your file. So let's say I have is I'm going to create another folder inside the style. It's called general.
So is it another folder or another file?
Another folder, then I'm pulling this into this general. So now if we go back, it no longer affects it. It's not pointing to the exact file, can't find the file, I have to go back and /general, go into general and get the file. Now, if we go back, it works. So the next part of what we did yesterday, I'm going to create a folder in the root file, I'll call it pages. Then I'm going to pull my index.html into this place. Now, doing this, it can't get it. Why? Because my root for this file, my index.html file, is the main file that my live server reads, and is the first file that is being used, that is being read. So now, if you are writing something like React or Go Advanced to React, Vue, or any other language, it's always what happens after your compilation and whatever you do. It always has a index.html file, because that's the first. If you have multiple files in pages, multiple pages, HTML pages, documents in your folder, the first page that is being loaded is your index.html. It shows that this is the first. That's the first page that the browser locates, because index.html index there shows that this is actually the thing I'm supposed to build this. So your index.html is your main file. I'm going to give you a to make a research on why we use index.html as our primary HTML file. So I believe most of us will do that. It's for research sake. Why is index.html used for index.html used as the primary HTML file in every web page? This is the first time of thinking of this thing. Why is it actually being used? Why can't I do something else on my browser and get, why is it that I must use index? So I don't want to deviate from tonight's class, and but that's an assignment. If you think about it, research on it, you get a proper answer, and it will help you. But in case you run into it and someone asks you that question, why do you use index.html? Why is index.html why are you using? Why can't you just use any other name aside index.html? What will happen? Will it work? Won't it work? That is your assignment. So I will be waiting for feedback on the pictures. If you answer, I would say there's a prize, but I think we'll come up with the prize for that. I think I'll add 5 marks to people that will research on that. 5 months the previous assignment. So it's a bonus assignment. If you want, it is not mandatory, but it's very important that you do that and also understand why we use index.html as a name and why is it the primary file, and explore. So thank you so much for that. Once again, welcome to the next class. And so let's say we have, okay, let's create another pages here. We have about us, that's us. Let's fetch TFL. Now I have this as So here, and I want to target my. So this is those goals. So I need to link this here. Thank you. To get the CSS, let's say I have a body here and I have H1, so it's about page. So I want this page to be filled. Now let's change this to rename it about. Now, how do we get the CSS working? And how do we link the other page that we have, the home page, to be able to go to this About Us page? So I believe you learned it during when you learned about multimedias and adding multimedias, adding links, adding images, and learned on how to add link pages to the next page. So we are going to add our. So now we have been using a method. So VS Code gives us access to do. If I put a forward slash this way, I will see that I am inside this page. I can't just come to this page. If I come here and do something like this, what happens? Let's see. I'm going to, so I have to go to about. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the home page and link about us to about that's page. So with this comment here, we put about and get about us, right? Okay, I have to tell me that about 2%. Yeah, okay. Let's refresh this. And the launch is again. HTML. Okay, that's because my folder, my HTML files are not in the same place. So if I do something like this, this, so I could now see the About Us page. So that means I see that our file structure have to, in order to do this in HTML file structure, all your HTMLs, in order to be linked, should be in the same folder. To be in the same folder. I placed it About Us here, and we weren't able to find it because it wasn't where it couldn't find it, but it was not in the same folder. So now, that being said, we have linked our work using dynamic routes. So in part, there's exact and there's absolute and relative. So now this I don't want to go very much deep into this part of linking. It's just your sourcing. So this is a relative part. We just use a relative linking. If we want to use an absolute, we do something like this, then file it and save it for ourselves. So this is okay, let's do this. So now we do this way. One dot is you are saved in that page. That's for absolute routes. We do something like this. This is absolute. For relative, just use something like this. It goes there without, you are not like pointing, okay, move there, move here, move here, move here and there. So I think I will treat this absolute, this pathway in more, in another time, when we get to another where we need more space. I will treat it so that we could understand it. I don't want to overcomplicate things with you. So basically, what we just did is learn how to link your file, arrange it in a way you don't have issues with that. So arrange your file properly. File structure could affect your work. So we have our CSS here. So I'm going to also remove this folder back to files and delete general because we only have our CSS for now. Then that's delete. Then I'm going to create another folder called images. This is where the folder where we are going to pack our image. So back to what we have. This is our HTML. We have linked it. So we have two files here. So back to what we have tonight. We are going to look at, we just did an overview of CSS building blocks, CSS building block overview. There's cascading and inheritance. We just talked about that. And now we are mentoring on the third agenda for tonight, which is the CSS selector. CSS selector. What are CSS selector? What do we mean by CSS selector? We talked about CSS selector. We said there's a selector property and value. What is selector? So now I created a markdown where we could check our CSS. Okay, a selector is a pattern that is used to select. A selector from the name selector means to select, to pick, or to target. That's what selector is about. To pick, to select, is used to select and target HTML elements that you want to style. That's basically what it is. It's a pattern that is used to select or target HTML elements that you want to use. Once selected, you can apply various styling rules, like colors or whatever you want to those elements. So selectors are very much important. Like I said, is one of the cornerstones of CSS because they allow you to pinpoint exactly which elements that you want to style or affect. So without a selector, you are as good as not doing anything because you have a whole lot of things, but you are not actually picking who or telling which element is to be affected or what exactly you want to do. So that's the importance of selector. So we have types of selector. We have types of selector. We have multiple types of selector. So we have a type selector, which is also known as element selector. Now, we in the previous examples we have been using type selector. So type selector is also known as the element selector. It selects all elements of that given type, all elements of that same name. So if on our HTML, I need to do this. We no longer have this. We just have this here. Then here also, we need to change. Once there's a change, we need to put that so that we have our style. So here, looking at what we have here, this is our project we are working on. And where we talk about type selector, or you can call it element selector, or you can call it tag selector. Any of these three is the same thing. Either you call it a tag selector, or you call it an element selector, or you call it a type selector. Now, if you use the sample we have here in our CSS, this is what we are using to color our background. I'm going to pull it off. So we want to target all the H1 elements we have on our web page. Using this, we say color, and we use red. Now,
Sorry, sir, I
with
can't see your
this,
screen. It's
you can't
static,
see
like
my
it's not
screen.
moving. Like it's not moving. I don't know, maybe it's my network. I don't know. It's not moving, like it's just static.
Okay. Okay. Can anyone else see my screen?
Yes, sir, I can see
Yes,
your
sir, I
screen.
can see your screen.
All right, thank you so much. So if you have a network issue, if you can't see my screen, leave the call and join back, you get that. So if you are following, can you give me a thumbs up so that I could know everybody's following? Give me a thumbs up if you're following. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you so much, thank you so much. Thank you. So now back to type selector. So we want all our H1 elements to have a color, a text color of brown. Using the type selector gives us this by default. All the H1, let's see, all the H1 elements we have, all the H1 elements we have on our page has this style with them. So all our H1 elements are taking that style of color brown. So you see that every other element was not affected, only the H1 element, because we are calling it by name. So if we say all paragraphs should take background color of blue. Let's say blue. we are just texting. So all our paragraphs has a background color of blue. We can now easily differentiate which is our paragraphs. So every paragraph on this has a background color of blue. That being said, if we want all the divs, okay, all section to have a background color of blue violet. Then we have, if we want all these, so I just want, what I'm trying to point out here is you could, and once that element exists, you can call any element and style it. So using the type selector, what you are doing is calling the elements by their element name or tag name. That's for element of tag or type selector for that. Then we come to the next one, which is the class
So please,
selector.
how do you bring out this particular display?
Which of the display? This?
No, the other one that is on the VS Code that has the types of selector.
Okay, I created a markdown file with .md. So you can easily write, put up a write-up for that. You can write normal text here without it being affected or throwing error because it is a markdown. So markdown accepts normal content and also codes. So that's for markdown.
Okay, sir.
Yes, thank you. So the next one we are looking at is, can you actually see the write-up? Let's see so that we could see more. Okay. I think we could read it more clearly now. So I could do something like this, make it more visible. Okay, let's go visible. All right, I think this is more visible now. We could read clearly. So class selectors, that's the second one. Second one is class selectors. A class selector targets elements that have a specific class attributes. Remember when we learned about class attributes? So the class attribute works in hand with class selector. So classes are reusable, meaning multiple elements can share the same class. Now, multiple elements can share the same class using class selectors. I want you to note something. I'm going to ask questions at the end of the class. Class selector. Multiple elements can share the same class. Class selectors, it goes in line, have specific class attributes. A class selector targets elements that have a specific class attribute. Class selectors are reusable, meaning multiple elements can share the same class. Now I'm going to create the same effects we have on our CSS. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to clean this. I will say or I'll call this text. I will use title text. Title is a tag. Title text should color. You have the text color brown. Now there is something that goes with class. Class has a unique way it's being represented. Now I'm going class for class attribute, it has a dot in front, which indicates that it's a class. If I pull out this, with using having our setup that we have, the setup we have with Prettier and VS Code, if I don't add a dot, it shows you that this is just, you see that this title white is just normal, it's just the white color, unlike the other ones that is colored yellow. But notice something, once I add a dot, the color changes to yellow. It shows us that okay, you're actually implementing something. Now title text is not a type selector. It means it's not an element. An element selector or tag selector, we call it element selector or tag selector. So it's not an element selector. Title text is not an element selector. So it has to fall. Either it is a class selector or an ID selector or any other form of selector. So because we are going with class selector, we use dot, then our selector name. So now what we are going to do, I'm going to back to my HTML file, get to this place. Here I'm going to create an attribute called class and add text title. Mind you, if you make a mistake for the spelling, what happens is this. If you have a mistake in the spelling, it will not point it. So if we refresh this, we are supposed to have that. So we refreshed it and it didn't work. Why? Why didn't it work? What are we not doing well? So let's get to this place. Text, and I used text title. Now you see the difference. Okay, so I could split my screen. Let me split my screen, do it this way. So I could work on two different, I could see my CSS and also my HTML. So this is here. So with this, I won't make mistake. Looking at what I have, I will just edit it and say this is title text. So now if I go to this place, I have it here. So we have it there. Let's use a brighter color so that we could see. I don't want to go there. This is green. This is green. Okay, we have it here. The color of that element that we targeted is green in color. Now, see what we have. You see that it's only, okay, let's change it to white so that we could get the full gist. With white, see that only this element that has this class has the color white. So I'm going to put this class from here, copy it, and tell that this is a h3 here. I'm going to add it here too. Then what happens? The h3 also has it. So I'm also going to go to find a paragraph here and add that class here. Now a paragraph here has it. Now, like we talked about class selector, we said every class selector affects multiple elements that is being targeted. So that being said, we have seen that we're using class selector with one style, you could target as many elements you want to target, which makes it reusable. So we go to the next one, which is ID selector. We go to the next one, which is ID selector. Now, an ID selector targets an element that has specific ID attributes. Previously, we just looked at class element. Class element targets elements that have specific class attributes. ID selector targets element that has specific ID attributes. Now, and unlike classes, an ID should be unique within a page, meaning that only one element should use a specific ID. You see the difference? Only one element should use a specific ID. But
So I have a question, sir.
okay.
Yes, I wanted to ask the example you gave on class. You gave what you typed, I think was title text, and
Yes.
then you went back and wrote a hence good. So what I want to ask is, what if all this has been changed to small letters? The capital letter T here is also changed to small letters, but it's the same name. Will it still work?
No. Let's try it. I've changed it to small letter, right? I've come to this place. It did not work because it's not letter case here is very much important. Letter case is very much important. If you change, capital letter and small letter are not the same thing. Uppercase and lowercase are not the same thing. Just like it's only in HTML that you actually if you have, let's do this, add capital section. So why let's say now this is only where you could do something like this because HTML is not very much case sensitive. It's not case sensitive. But coming to CSS, now this is just like identical twins. Okay, let's do this. Okay, this is a woman gave birth to two identical twins, but the difference is that the first twin is short and the other twin is tall. Now, let's go to our HTML and target, let's say for title text is going to be, so here I'm going to use class. I'll use title text. Okay, I think I should use the short twin. So now on my CSS, I'm going to on my CSS, I'm going to change the text for this. For this, I'm going to use a color of let's use yellow. Let's use yellow. So what happens now? The guy, you see, these are now two different things. Yes, they have the same spelling, but there's a difference in their letter case. This is a capital letter T and small letter t. Yellow here and yellow. Okay, let's do something like this. Give both of them yellow. Give both of them yellow, and let's give both of them the color yellow. Yellow. But I'm going to change the font size. I'm going to use a font size. Let's say, let's use SS large. Then we use font size. That's right font. Use a font size of let's use small. So what happens? They have the same thing, but we have the same color, but we are differentiating it by this. You see that the other one, the one with the capital letter T, has is smaller, while the one with the capital small letter T is bigger, to show that these are two different entities, despite the fact that they have the same spelling. That's why in CSS, if you make a mistake, if I remove this now, if I remove T here, this is already another class of its own. It's already a class. Now, if I do that, the styling for this has gone out because there's no class bearing this. So when targeting your CSS, you have to be very much careful with that. I believe I've answered your question. Thank you so much for that. Now we want to target is attributes. Now for attributes, I'm still going to use attributes. Attributes uses to target an attribute we use hash tag to do that. The hash for attributes. So I've changed attributes here using this attribute. You see that element, ID, attribute, title text. Now for here, this is element class attribute. It shows that this is how you are supposed to have it. Then elements ID. So if I do this, I've changed this here and I've not updated my HTML file to ID attribute. This will not go, is not going to work. It's not going to work because it's no longer a class. I'm using a class attribute. I'm using an ID attribute. So what I'm going to do is go to my HTML and change everywhere I have this. I'll change it to an ID. Everywhere I have my text, I'll change it to ID. So as much as you could target an ID, you can use ID in multiple places, but every element should have a unique ID. Now, I want to show you something very, why ID is very important. ID is different from class. Now, let's go to recipe. Oh, let's go. Okay, this is our recipe. Yes, I'm going to use this ID here. Use ID recipe. I want to prove to you why it's important to use one ID. Every element that you are targeting should have a unique ID. Now, the power of ID. I'm going to our navigation here. I'm going to add here. I will call that ID here. I'll say hash recipe. So what will happen? Now, if I get to this and click on this, it will take me to this section recipe because I'm targeting an exact ID. But if we use a class, let's use a class. You see that you can't do something like that with a class. You can't do something like that with a class. That's why, as important as it is, every ID that you are passing should be unique for just that element, because you could use ID. With ID, you could do a lot of magic. So if you are to build a single web page, now single web page, and you have a navigation, just like what we have here, you have your navigation bars here, but it's a single page. It's not directing you to any external page. Now, with ID, you use ID to target it. So once you click on that, this hasn't refreshed. So once you click on that, it navigates you to exact position where, remember what I did on my HTML file is I went to the parent section of this ID. And so let me copy this here. I'm going to collect this from here and get down to the footer and put the ID here. So what will happen if I click on this? What happens? So let's click on this. It brings out the last part of the footer, takes us there. If so, to show that we are targeted, that's the power of ID. As good as ID is, you could use it. So I could now say something like, on my CSS, let's give ID of, let's say an ID. I could change here to give here an ID recipe, and give me text color. What happens? We could find our changes. You see that every text inside our footer has taken the color of yellow, then, and with the size small. So let's add background color of black. Let's use black so that to be very much obvious. So if we do that, we have our background color black, the footer has a background color black with whatever we have there. So now, that being said, we have seen the importance of ID attributes, what it can be used, what you can use it for. So you could use it to why it is important for an ID selector to be unique within a page. So an ID should be unique within a page, meaning that only one element should use a specific ID. Now, let's try it out. Let's try out another aspect of this. Let's copy this here. I'm going to copy this and also add it here. Let's see the outcome of what we are going to do. Let's see the outcome, what's going to happen. So when I click on recipe, what happens? Now, it's only taking the first place this ID was presented, because that's it only loads the recipe, our programs, workout programs, which is here. That's only it. It does not, it's not targeting, because now I'm trying to, for CSS it works, but for loading exactly to the page, just like what we are doing when we are trying to map in between the pages, you see that it didn't really work out for us, because it cannot go take us down to the footer at the same time taking us to this place. So it's only taking the first one. That's why it's more advisable that your ID should be unique. But for the CSS, it affects everywhere you add the ID, it affects it. You can use it for the sake of CSS, you could use an ID anywhere, multiple places, just like your class. But for the sake of uniqueness, and you use a single ID for a specific place to do a specific task, so that whenever you apply it anywhere for future purpose, you just like if we are to build a single page, we use ID attribute just to link it. Using our navigation, we can navigate, we can scroll through the app just with our navigation bar because of our ID attribute. That's the importance of ID selectors. So that being said, we move over to the next one, which is universal selector. Universal selector. Universal selector. The universal selector targets all elements on a page. Targets all elements on the page. Why? When you hear the name universal charger means it charges everything. Anything universal means it's everything within. It can do it. That's where you have a universal charger. It charges the battery and all those stuff. So universal selectors target all elements on the page. It's represented by an asterisk. Now, this is a unique selector. So back to our CSS, a unique selector. So we have where we have, so I'm going to do some lines. Asterisk, then makes a background color, is big color, background color. I need a background color of white. Then I need padding of 20 pixels. And, so what happened? All it affects everywhere, everything all around the page. So I've given is what I want it to have. So it's affecting every other page that does not have a unique background. Now, let's look into this. Remember, we have that inside our padding, inside our paragraph, this blue background is our paragraph. We stated that all our paragraph should have, our paragraph has a background color of blue for all the paragraphs. So anywhere you have a paragraph, the background color is blue. Now, this universal selector, we added padding to this, add spacing. You see that everywhere there is a space. This is every section. You see that there is a space here. This section with purple is the section element. We had a section element that is taking the color blue violet. Now, but with this universal, we said, see, guy, we told this guy to see all the, I need, said, BBD, Bobidi Boo, abracadabra, all the background color of what we have on our web page should be white, having the padding, giving them a space of 20 anywhere, no matter what it is. I need every single element to possess this. I want to gift everyone with a background color, everyone in this hall with a background color of white and a space of 20. That's just what he said. That's just the instruction. And despite the element name, the tag name, or whatever it wants to be, obeyed that rule, because it's a universal. It affects every element. So here you see that every element has a space in between, has the so let's do something like this. Let's add a text color of let's choose a one font color. Let's use this. So are you seeing what I'm saying? So I want you to follow up. I need you to follow up, because if it won't be nice if I blow all the grammars and you don't follow. If you are with me, I need emojis. This I can believe that you all are okay. Thank you, Abigail, Lucy, Florence, Fetia, is Cassie. All right. So now I told you that I said, let every element have a text color of this beautiful color, ladies color that I have here. Then, except the element that has a unique color appended to it. Now, I know you are going to ask that question. Why is it that there is an element here that still possesses the color yellow? So the reason why this guy has the color of yellow is because, where do I have that guy? here on this element. This is an element, footer element has a unique property of text color yellow. That is why it is that way. I saw someone's hand. I believe I've answered your question. That's okay. Go ahead with your question, Abdullah.
Please, good evening. Please, I realized there's this section that has the border around that whole section being purple. So I'm wondering how you got that.
Okay.
It's not the background, it's like a section.
Okay, here. So now I have, let's go to our CSS. We have section. We are using a type selector that all section elements should have a background color of blue violet. So all section color has a background color of blue violet. Let's see. Bring us inspector. All section elements. So let me copy this and let's use another browser and see. Yeah. So I'm going to bring us an inspector so that we could look into it and see for ourselves. So here we have, this is what we have. You see, it's a section tag. You notice that all these elements, section element has purple, has the background purple. So we are using inspector to check it. Let's check what's happening here. So this is the section, the fourth section, which is here. The fourth section should be this section, has the background color of blue violet, which is cancelling out the universal selectors color, background color of white. Do you understand? So if I remove this, by default it takes the universal color, background color of white. Because so the reason why this does not in CSS, anyways, let's go ahead. In CSS, we have what we call importance, inherence, importance. So if, because I targeted a single element, it's taking it as, it's treating this section style here as an important, as it is, because I'm targeting the element. I have a reason why I'm targeting it, which any general thing shouldn't affect it. And once there is an existing color here, background color here, this background color will not affect this section. So if I add, let's say I add a padding of 10 here, 10 pixels. Now you see that it has also cancelled out the general one. You see that this element only has a padding of 10 instead of 20. So once I cancel it out again, it takes back the general one. So this is a general, everybody is supposed to, by default, everyone here is supposed to, by default, everyone here is supposed to have a background color, a padding, and a text color. So, but because I have a styling that is specific to this section, you see that it overrides this general one that they are being given to. So we are giving it preferential treatment. Let's say this section has become a VIP. in this event. So I'm not saying all VIPs is going to have a background color. You know that, okay, let's take it this way. We said that every participant is going to have a background color of white with padding of 20 and color. Now, I now said, okay, VIPs are also participants, right? Yes, but the difference is that they are VIPs. And I said, okay, for VIPs will now have a background color of blue violet. That's for all VIPs now is going to have background color of blue violet, which they are now a unique participants. So now I'll now tell it, okay, VIPs now. I need VIPs to have just padding of 10 instead of, I don't want them to have too much spacing. So I'll now tell it, okay. Now, this is, I've now separated the VIPs from every other participants, but still, they still have a color. They are still sharing the same color. They are still seeing the same stage. So this is our stage screen, whatever that is happening in the event. But the difference is that they are now sitting on a different seat with a round table. Why this every other participant you are with a regular ticket, you just standing and sweating and shouting. Why VIPs are seated with AC very close to them and on a round table. So that is just what is happening here. So I will advise you to relate programming to real life and real life to programming. It helps you to have a very much better understanding of the concept everywhere. Programming is abstract, yes, but if you relate it with what happens in your everyday life, real life, you get to understand it. And here we are dealing with CSS. You have to be very much be able to relate it with things around you so that you're able to understand what's happening. So with that being said, that's what is happening here. We so if we remove this general this thing, now see that only the VIPs are doing their thing. So that being said, we have been able to know the difference and the importance of how the universal selector works and what it does.
Thank you.
So, all right, thank you so much. So back to the next thing we have on our list is attributes selector. Attribute selector, which is number 5. Attribute selector. Attribute selector. Some will say, this is not commonly used. I've not seen when it's being used. I've not seen it. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've not seen something like this. So how come about this? Why is this way? No, is attribute selectors. Attribute selectors. An attribute selector allows you to target elements based on the presence and value of a specific attribute. So attribute selectors. An attribute select allows you to target elements based on the present or value of a specific attribute. For example, to select elements with the type text attribute. So now, okay, where I will tell you there is in Angular, when Angular JS, Angular JavaScript, you have, that's where exactly this is how the methods we use that is being used in Angular, and also in Vue.js. You also do something like this in Vue.js. This is how the styling works. They use you call use the attribute selector. So now the way this is this, we call the elements and the attributes exactly. So now let's do something like this, very much effective. We don't have an input, we don't have an input. So here we have a button, right? In our CSS, we have a button. We have a button. We have a button in our CSS. So we could do something like this, button. Then we have button has an attribute of type submit, right? So let's check very well. Type submit, yes. We have buttons. Where is our? We have button here. Yeah, we have a button. Let's add it a type of. Okay, type. Then let's also add title to it. Title. Button. This type. So that's being said. After our CSS, we need to use want to target type. We want to target submit and give it a color of aqua. So people can see. Now what we just did is we targeted an attribute of type submit and give it a color. Now this is just another way of adding CSS, but you see that what happened here, it's not changed the color of this button. It did not change the color of this button. But once I pull out this, because if I pull this out, the button takes the color. But here we are targeting a specific attribute, and this attribute does not have a visible appearance. So that's why we can't see the default any changes in that. So if we had an input, for example, here we have an input text, we have border one peso solid black. So what happens is that it has a border to all input elements that have the same type. So now all inputs that have the same type, we take off that. So let's try it out. Let's try to have less time. We have a few minutes to go. So okay, if so, this styling here is going to affect if we do it for input or inputs that have the same list. Okay, let's do something like this. Let's copy this for this button. So please give it a order. I'm going to change, go back to the HTML and all the okay. Oh, this target uh, create something like title, more. So we are telling it all buttons that have the title of more. So we come to this button and say, where else do we have a button? We have a button. It's title more. So this, so we have that there. Okay, this student has become title. Okay, it took it came out and we have that there. That being said, this goes to next one. We have the centered selector. Now the centered selector allows you to target an element that is nested inside another element. Now the centered selector. The standard selector. So this is basically allows you to target element that is being nested. So I'm going to do something like this. This is so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out paragraph. There is no style for paragraph now. So what I'm going to do is this. So they show that there's no style for paragraph, right? So what I want to do, I want to target all paragraph on inside section. So now this is every paragraph that is nested inside a section. Now you could see from our two top here, you see that is any paragraph that is inside a section element is going to take up this styling. So let's see. Do we have any paragraph that is inside a section? Let's see what our HTML look through it. We don't have. So we see that we have section, we have div. So we see that it didn't work. So we are going to add div. Did you change? So if so, what happens is we are targeting session div p. And we have that. So let's add a text color of white. And we have that there as every paragraph that is nested inside of a section or D should take up this style. That's what we call descendant. We are descending just like the way we have it here. Is we are targeting the paragraph inside. So any other paragraph that does not have this hierarchy will not be affected. So that's for descendant selector. Then we have another selector that is called child selector. Now, child selector is similar to descendant selector, but is more specific. That means we are becoming more specific. It only targets direct children of an element, direct children. So now, this way is going to work because we are using descendants. But if we use direct, it's not going to work. Why? Because there is no direct, there's no child. Paragraph is not a child of section. So if I send in this and send in this, now it will work because we have, it works now because section div is a child of section and paragraph is a child of div. So because of that, it's going to work. But because we are using child selector. But when we are using descendant, if we are using descendant, this it works. Anyhow you do that, it's going to work. You don't need to have, I could do this, it still works because I'm targeting every P that is under this section here. Every P that is inside this section div that is nested inside the section element. So, but when I'm using child, I'm specific that I want to be Sokoro's daughter. Simple. That means I need to locate Mr. Okonkwo's house to get to Mr. Okonkwo's daughter. I'll have to reach Mr. Okonkwo's family to get Mr. Okonkwo's daughter. So that's just what is happening there. Have to be specific. Once you are going with child selector, you have to be very much specific. So we move over to the next one, which is adjacent sibling selector. You ask, what the hell is adjacent sibling selector? So are we joking? No, it's another type of selector. Adjacent sibling selector targets an element that is immediately preceded by another element. This is written with a plus sign. That is immediate preceded. So now, using this, we have H1 plus P with our CSS. Now, this rule targets the first P element that comes directly after an H1. So, let's copy this code, come to our CSS, and fix it over here. Fix it up here. Now, what will happen? It's going to affect the paragraph that comes immediately after a H1. So on our CSS, the paragraph that comes immediately after a H1, we select it. So I need to look for one so that we could see it, or I'm going to change since that all our paragraph is where we have paragraph is preceded with h2. So I'm going to change it to okay, there's one, just one paragraph that has such. You see that it's just one paragraph that is preceded, which is on that should be the top side of our code. Yes, immediately after that's our hero section. That's where we have that. We have that on our hero section. We have a paragraph that comes immediately after a H1 section. So that is that for this. To the next one, which will be the last one. Sorry, which should be the last one. Just a minute. So, okay, then okay. So this is for adjacent sibling, then general sibling selector, and we have the last one, also element selector. So okay, I have Florence and Victoria Sands are up. So then, yeah, your question.
Good evening, sir. Sir,
Yeah,
please,
good
what's the
evening.
difference between the?
The difference
Can you hear me,
between,
sir?
yes, go ahead.
Between the adjacent sibling and the descendant sibling, because at least the descendant sibling is the one we use the greater than sign, right?
Yes, they said that. No, they said that you don't use the greater than sign. You you don't use the greater than sign
Is
for
it
the sender.
child
Yes, your child selector.
is it
Child
child
selector. Child
yeah,
selector.
child selected?
You use greater than sign. Then descendants, you don't use a greater than sign. Now the difference is that I explained it. Difference descendant is that once you have your family name. So anybody that bears your family name by default is your sibling. So that's your extended family name. That's descendant. So you can say that you are from the descendant of Mr. Okonkwo. So which does not really specify that Mr. Okonkwo is your father until if is once is a child, they will now say you are the child of Mr. Okonkwo. You see the difference? That's the child of Mr. Okonkwo and descendant of Okonkwo's. The Okonkwo's means you're a descendant of Okonkwo's. But when they now said you are the child of Okonkwo, means that you are the child of Mr. Okonkwo. They are no longer talking about that you're a descendant. That means you are one of the children of the Okonkwo's generation. You understand that now?
Yes, I understand the difference between child selector and descendant selector. I wanted to talk
Okay.
about child selector and adjacent sibling selector. Because we are using
Okay,
the greater than for the child selector, and we are using the plus sign for the adjacent, right?
yes. Okay, now adjacent.
But they are both
Adjacent.
okay. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So adjacent is directly, you are pointing out that the one that you want, that one that, okay, you have two plates. There is a place that you want, that is the port that is directly after, immediately once you pass the first door, the second door is the toilet. Now, immediately after the first door, the second door is the toilet. Now, that's just a description. That's what you are doing. But when you just say, go to a door, so child, which scenario would I use for child? Child is, oh God, I can't wrap my head about a illustration I could use for child. But that's, when you're using adjacent, means immediately after this thing, the one immediately after this is the one you are looking for. So the the first building, the first story building immediately after, all after the bungalow, is the house of Mr. Konko. Now it means that the first bungalow, the first story building you are going to see after you have passed bungalows is the house that you are looking for. Do you understand it now? So that's adjacent.
Yeah.
You are just pointing directly. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, whose else hand is up? So we have actually exceeded our time. Whose else hand is up?
Size mine.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so please, I noticed that since we entered CSS, I've been finding it quite difficult to understand what we're actually doing. So I don't know because I've tried to go over the videos. I watched yesterday's video, I think once this afternoon, but I'm still not getting it. Is there some maybe a recommendation that you can give me so that to
Okay.
help me practice better because I notice I'm not really catching up with CSS.
All right. All right. I have an article. I've written an article on attributes, which is very detailed. I will drop the link tomorrow. I will drop the link tomorrow morning. Once it's 7 a.m., the article will be published. I will drop the link with Lucy. Lucy will send it, and then on Friday, I'll also drop the link for the selector. So I will write an article on the selectors so that you could understand. Okay, I have to first write an article for the first class, which is the first CSS overview, which talks about what we talked about, so that you could follow suit very much in case you are missing out after watching the video.